Welcome to another episode of the Rich Woman Rising podcast. I'm your host, Eloise Tompkins, and I help women heal their relationship with money using body-based techniques. Today, though, is a little bit of a different episode because I wanted to bring in some exceptional women to talk about their relationship with money because gosh, there is a lot that underpins our relationship with money. And today I have an incredible guest who I am so excited to meet. Just before the show started recording, we were talking about how we met and how I turned around and saw her with her beautiful pom-pom singlet. And that is how we initially connected. And from there, we're now talking money. So I'm super excited today to bring Mary fucking Miller to the stage. And Mary is an amazing, I cannot even tell you how amazing she is at branding and event photography, capturing all of the fun that we have at all of the different events. She is just such an energetic bundle of fabulousness and really knows how to get into the heart of capturing the joy at the events. And honestly, like if I could have that creative bone, Mary, I would love it. But I'm so grateful for you to be on the show to talk about money. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into event photography, and a little bit about you and who you are?
Yeah, awesome. Firstly, hi. Hello. So I have to go back about 8 years actually, and I was working in like a retail job, and I had a kid, and it actually wasn't worth like the cost of childcare and all of that. By the time I'd worked a 40-hour week with my kid in childcare, and my partner was in the military at the time, so his income with Centrelink was a lot. And we had to, by the time I'd pay for childcare, I'd be 100 and something dollars in pocket. And it wasn't worth it. So I had always had an interest for photography. I had a camera, I picked it up, and I mean, I started doing $50 shoots here and there. And it just started, the momentum started. I got my name out there. But, you know, when you're doing that to make a little bit of extra cash, you always start with the mindset of it's just for a bit of cash. Who cares? No one cares who I am. Um, and yeah, that's how it started, despite not being able to afford the childcare really. And now here we are 8 years later, 9 years later. And God, I still don't really believe it, to be honest.
Oh, and we're going to unpack that because I think that is such a common experience that women have, and we're going to go more into your story. So I'm not gonna what are those things called on the shows? Spoilers. I'm not going to give any spoilers at the moment, but it's really interesting that 9 years later and the success that you've built in your business, starting from that mindset of, oh, it's just a little bit of extra cash.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that because a lot of women kind of do start their business with the idea of, oh, I just want to replace my 9 to 5 salary. And if I can replace my 9 to 5 salary, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
And
it's hard because it's like, I mean, that 9 to 5 salary, I was working at a photo center in Harvey Norman, and that 9 to 5 salary was $550 a week, right? And I was working 40 hours a week. And at that point, it wasn't even a choice. Like I would love, you know, I hear lots of stories of women who are like, oh, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to do it. And for me, it was like, it's not actually physically worth my time to do that and to have that. Like I have to do it. So yeah.
well, I think money is such a survival tool. Like we need it. You know, we can't. And I've heard stories too where they're like, oh, I can't with my corporate anymore. I just have to get out. And that is a very privileged place to be in for a lot of people. And if you are in that position, that's great. You know, that's fantastic. Good for you. Use that privilege. At the same time, it's not a privilege that everybody else has. I know for myself, it's certainly not a privilege that I have.
Yeah.
And money is important. Money is something that we need to pay for ourselves, to pay for our family and our childcare. And then being left like with far out $100 a week. or whatever, or
Yeah.
fortnight, I'm imagining it's probably, that's nothing.
Yeah, especially when the element of, okay, well, then my baby is now in childcare. I'm not with my baby for 9 hours a day, and I'm working like a dog for what, $150. Like it just didn't make physical sense. I also have to take mention that the women who do quit their job and go, I'm gonna, like, fight or flight, I'm gonna make it work, I'm gonna do it, I'm really hungry for it. I was a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum where, I'd had the conversation with my husband, like, is it actually worth me doing that? I'll admit I had the safety blanket of a military wage coming into our family, right? So I was hungry, but I wasn't like, it's do or die, right?
Mm.
Which is a which is sort of like a little bit of a different circumstance. It's like, if I make $100 here, great. If I make $50 there, fantastic. But we would have survived regardless, right? It wasn't ideal to be off one wage,
Mm.
but we were okay.
We all have our different circumstances, and all of our circumstances are going to be so unique. Like, my circumstance is so different to that. I didn't have a partner, I didn't have family, it's just me. But then there are also women like yourself who do have a partner that they can fall back on, or might not be ideal, but there's
Yeah.
kind of, like you said, that safety
Yeah.
blanket. But at the end of the day, it is safety, because
Yes.
money is safety, money is security, and that's kind of why we do have such a emotional attachment to it, because
Yeah.
we need it literally to survive. Like,
Yeah, correct. I had this moment, you know, I'd so my daughter was born in 2016. So 3 years later, I had momentum, and I had connections. At this point in my career, I had met the beautiful Emma Isaacs from Business Chicks, and we'd had collaborations together. And that's how I met a lot of strong, empowered women, and did that. And then, surprise, surprise, COVID hits. And in my line of industry, I mainly started with weddings. So I did a lot of events, but weddings for me were my bread and butter. And it was hard when suddenly, I had taken on like $1,000 deposits for people who have, $5,000 invoices with me, and suddenly they're canceling. Suddenly it's like, I had nothing in my contract about a global pandemic. Am I giving back this money? Am I saying to people, I'll keep your money, but let's, when you're ready to get married, let's get married, right? There were all these things where suddenly I'd got the momentum of my business, and then it was completely shut down. And that was really hard to come through. But I will admit, I actually made the most money I've ever made in COVID, coming out of COVID, with people still putting down deposits, still reshuffling things. And then maybe there was an element of also not being able to go and spend money as well. Maybe.
but definitely. I laugh because I think back to COVID and like how people would have all these packages arriving at their door, and how the post offices were inundated. So I laugh at that, thinking back to my experience where I was definitely one of the spenders in COVID. That's really interesting though. And you're so right, like the ebbs and flows of money. And I think that's something that a lot of business owners struggle with as well, is that cash flow and the year to year. And there's that real sense of, oh my goodness, what if everything that I've built up will just fail and flop, and then then what?
Yeah.
Then I've got accustomed to a particular lifestyle. And
Yep.
so I can imagine that COVID would have been really hard. But it also sounds like for you, it was kind of ended up being a real positive. How did that shift happen?
And I'm not saying this was the right decision to make, but I ended up taking some money out of my super, and I used that money to upskill my brand. So, completely doing a rebrand. I was originally Smile Darling Photography, so I invested in a new logo, I invested in a new website. I did all the things that I should have done at the very beginning, launching a business. And I spent that money doing that. And then coming out of COVID, it was like this whole new power of look at me, look what I've got, look what I can give you, and look how I can help you and serve you. And I think in COVID, the best thing we all got given was time.
Mm,
I mean, time with family, but time to actually sit and think, what do I want to do? What am I offering? What am I sitting here doing? And that momentum of those 3 years and that mindset of being like, okay, it's just $50 here, it's $100 here. Yeah, it's a couple of family shoots. Oh, I've got this and that. I kept that mindset the whole way through until
mm.
I actually was physically like, okay, I have to put down my camera. The government says I can't work. What should I be doing now? And how am I going to do that? So getting the momentum and the money, the funds there to be able to change and rebrand. I just, coming out of COVID, looked like a professional. I'm in no way a professional, but my brand was schmick. Everything was good. Like, that's how it was.
Okay, so for those of you who might be listening to this podcast for the first time, I forgot to mention at the start, I'm also a psychologist, and my brain just went, that was really an interesting comment, Mary. Can we unpack that? Because I'm so curious, like, and because again, I think a lot of listeners will relate to this, where there's this sense like your website is, like you said, schmick, like it's fucking brilliant. If you haven't checked out her website, even if you're not into photography, go and have a look because it is on point. Like it is so good. Your socials on point. On the surface, you look like you are fucking smashing it. And even financially smashing it, because I know we've spoken about that as well, and we'll get to that. However, it sounds like on the inside, there's a bit of a different story going on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I remember when I had this photographer that I used to idolize. He was amazing and he still is. He's next level. And I remember before pre-COVID, he was doing like a wedding workshop, and I was like, oh my God, I need to be like this guy. He's incredible. His work is amazing. And I flew all the way down to Sydney and had this in-person workshop with him. And don't get me wrong, like everything he said was great. Like I learned lots of technical skills and that. And I remember he sat in front of me and he was like he sort of looked at everyone's website and socials and stuff like that. And he said, oh, what's the saying where it's like, he's like, you're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And that stuck with me because, I would do family photography, I do event, I do weddings, I do, all of these things. And I understood that my socials, maybe, if you were a bride being like, I want a wedding photographer, right? And you look at my socials and I've got pictures of kids on there. Like I understood what he said. But I got to admit, it took me years to be like, no, I can be a master of everything if I want to. And you know what the shift was? When I shifted my brand to Mary Miller, and it was me, and this is me, this is my brand, whatever I fucking offer is what it is. Game changer. My revenue doubled, almost tripled, in it just being me and my brand. But yeah, I'll never quite forget that moment of being like, oh, okay, shit. Should I just like do one thing? Do I need to start like 10 million social pages for the different avenues of which I'm photographing? Like, and it was really, yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard. But yeah, game changer, changing my business to my name and it being me.
That again, I feel like so many women listening will relate, because one of the biggest things that comes up as a money block, which people are kind of like, oh, I didn't realize that was a money block, is comparison.
Oh, thief of joy, man.
And that too, right? It's like thief of joy, but also a money blocker. And the reason for that is kind of like what you were saying, like comparing yourself in some ways to, I want to be like this person's photography style. Wow,
Yeah.
they're so skilled. I'm not as good as them.
Yeah.
Or my photos don't look quite like that. And I really respect their photography. I wish I could be like them. And I think we all do that in different ways. I wish I could charge as much as that person. I wish I could post on socials like that person's posting, or whatever it is that we're experiencing and comparing is ultimately blocking the revenue, right? Because like you said, when you fully leaned into your unique power, which I agree, with you, it is your unique power because your photos are phenomenal. Like they are incredible. Like that's Business Chicks, Emma Isaacs. That's how you and I connected. And like your photos are just like, seriously, I'm in awe. I think they're brilliant because they are you. And I think the power of being able to lean into who you are as a business owner is really, really powerful. And it's something that a lot of women are fucking scared to do. And that being said, though, I want to understand the financial journey, because when you were working in that retail job all those years ago, which is funny, isn't it, that you're in photography? I didn't know that part. So there's obviously been that element there, that creative side, and you're earning, not that much. And you kind of shifted to now, 9 years later, being the breadwinner of your family. Can you speak a little bit to what it was like going from that low end income to now being multiple six figures?
It was a wild change. Like coming out of COVID, my husband really wanted to be able to change his whole career. Like he's had a pivotal moment. He was working in a very specific job, working on aircraft, and he's like, no, I need to like completely change my life, which was a conversation we had to be like, okay, how can we do that and how can we make it work? So it was like, all right, Mary, it's time. And it did feel right at the time, because it's like, all right, I had all those years to be able to be like, I lent on you so much so I could build these connections and do that. Now it's your turn, right? So he quit his job, and that was my time to hustle. I always feel like my superpower in business is really my connections. I'm a real extroverted person and I love talking, and I have this power of people just to be like, my photography could be so shit, but people are like, I just want to hang out with you, right? Which I'm like, I own that. I own that and I lean on it.
That.
It's how I get a lot of my work. But yeah, it was a stressful period to be like, all right, let's fucking do this. And again, I had, because I'm so extroverted, I feel like I had a lot of confidence in being like, you know what? Like I've just slagged my ass for like 6 years doing weddings. It's time. I'm doubling my prices. And when I first doubled the price, I got ghosted a little bit. And I was like, my inner person was like, is my work not worthy? Oh my God. And then I had this one couple reply and they said, it's a little bit out of our budget, but you're so worth it, word for word. And I was like, that was it. That was it for me. I was like, I'm worth it. Oh my God. Okay, great. And it's honestly, I got to tell you, it's been full steam ahead ever since. Ever since no one's ever questioned my pricing. No one's ever, if they want me, they want me. You know what I mean? And that's a mindset. It's a skill to be able to do that.
It really is. And it's interesting because like one of the things that I'll speak to is the fact that we need to lean into that discomfort. And it sounds like you did that, you raised your prices, doubled them, and people are going to ghost you. People are going to not want to work with you. I've had that. I've had clients who I've worked with, I've increased my prices, not even doubled them, and they're like, no. And being able to separate you as a person from money is so important, because if you were to kind of go, and you kind of did that a little bit by the sounds of it, in terms of, I had this moment where I looked inwards and I really felt it. It sounds like you really felt something in your body that was kind of like, oh my goodness, I'm questioning myself. And I think that happens for a lot of us. And what then happens typically is we have this experience of everyone's ghosted me, and now I'm going to lower my prices again. I'm going to put them back because my business is going to fail. And we jump to that worst case scenario. When in reality, it's just a price. And the meaning that we're attaching to it becomes so much more. And it can be really hard because there's so much emotion around money to then detach from that. And I guess I'm super, super curious, like around that sense of worthiness, because I know one of the things that you've mentioned that it can be really hard is this sense of, well, now I earn way more than my husband. I'm the main breadwinner, and this real sense of shame associated with that. How does that look for you?
I think it's like one of my, as women and growing up, right? Like my single mother, she worked night shift, and I just felt like she worked as a nurse. And I just feel like there is an element to the older generation of people in technology growing up, right, that don't believe that people in general, not just women, but people in general can make money online. They can make money by showing up and showing your face. And I remember it's like a couple of months ago, and my mum lives with my husband and I. She lives in a granny flat in our house. And I remember mum said, oh, you know that interest rates are rising, and are you like, have you put money aside? And I remember having this moment being like, fuck, mum, like I'm making triple what you made online. That's not to one up my mother, but it was this moment where I realized that mum, I think my mum actually just thinks I've got a camera in my hand and I'm just taking photos. I don't think she realized how much I was actually making and making for my family. And there is a lot of, I do feel a lot of, it's almost like I can't boast about it. You know what I mean? Like that felt like a big conversation to have with my mum. Like, it's all good. We've paid off 20% more on our home loan. Like, all these little things that you just feel like I can't be like, holy fuck, look at me go. Look what I'm doing. And I'll be honest, I'm still not quite there. I'm still not. I realized at the start of the year, it was my first year that I wrote out a what do you call it, like a mood board of sorts of things that I really wanted to accomplish this year. And because I feel like I've been working like a dog as to, building connections and doing this and doing that and taking this and taking that and doing those things. I had this it's like I wanted to do a wedding in Vegas. I wanted to book a holiday and pay for a holiday straight out. I wanted to get a new car. What was the other thing? I wanted to have a certain amount in my savings. I did all of those things by March. And the problem happened is by March, instead of celebrating them, I'd changed my goalposts. And I'd said, oh, well, now I want to do a wedding in Italy. And I didn't celebrate the wedding in Vegas, or I didn't celebrate the brand new car I bought. Like things like that. I just automatically went, oh, okay, done that. Now what? And I wasn't proud of myself, and I didn't take that opportunity to be like, holy shit. Like I had a 90 grand month. Like, there is a lot of self-reflection there to stop and look. And to be honest, I don't really know how one does that. Tell me, give me.
Oh, I love that so much. Oh, and as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, oh my goodness, women are going to be listening to this episode, being able to relate to this on such a deep level. And I really appreciate your openness and vulnerability in sharing, because these are conversations that we don't have a lot of. well, I have a lot of them because this is the work that I do. So as you're speaking, I'm like, you know what? I know that there are going to be a lot of other women who are feeling the same way. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
these are money blocks. These
Mm.
are, let me be super clear, these are money blocks. And I don't say that I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, I guess, to um and they don't always need to be fixed or healed or anything like that. Sometimes awareness is really helpful. But I guess my point is with that is to highlight this is how money blocks play out for us. And we all have them, regardless of what level we're at, regardless of how much money we've made, regardless of how healed, air quotes, we have worked on our relationship with money. They play out in so many small, big, different ways that we need to constantly be being mindful of our relationship with money. I'm going on a bit of a side tangent, but I guess I just wanted to highlight that for anybody who's listening, because um, all of the women that I speak with on this podcast are going to have money blocks. And it's not because they haven't done the work on them, because they haven't shifted their relationship with money. It's just because so many of these money blocks have been embedded from such a young age. You were talking about your mum, and the way I heard the conversation with your mum was there was a lot of fear from mum. And I don't know, like I can imagine being a single mother looking after kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you had siblings or not, but I imagine that would have been tough. Like it wouldn't have been easy.
No, absolutely. And, you know, mum, well, like we carried that, right? Like we were
Mm,
always, doing what we could, but we, yeah, I don't know. Mum was always like, we can't do this, we can't do that.
mm,
And there becomes an element. And then on the other side of it, I had my dad who I never really saw, but when I did, he would chuck me $100 and I'd be like, oh my God, $100.
mm,
Great. And then mum would be on the other end of the foot going, oh, cool, but what about school uniforms? You know what I mean? And I'd be like, I don't care. I've got $100. I'm going out to get that shirt from Supre, right? And it
yeah.
was like, that was my relationship with money, where I would grow up being like, oh, I'll just get cash. I'll just do this. I'll just do that. There was never really any um, conversation around, maybe you could put that money towards something else, or maybe you could do this, or maybe you could do that. I would just see it as cash to spend and cash to do. And then I would get the other side of mum, who was very frugal and very,
Mm,
we're doing this and we're doing that. And so absolutely. But I do feel like at least now in the last couple of years, there's been an element to me that's like, especially with my own girls, it's like, no, you know what? It's so important to teach my kids about money. And
mm,
and there is an element to, when you have a good month, and I'm like, we're going to dream world, kids, like, yeah, and we're going to go do that. And that's so fun. And then
mm,
I remember my girl not too long ago being like, can we go to time zone? And it was this expectation, right? And I just sort of felt a little bit like I would have never have gotten that as a child.
mm,
That was something that just never happened. And so I can recognize it, and I can see it, and I can hear it. And I've had a lot of conversations with my kids about, you know, all of that. We can't just do that because we need to do that. And mummy's working and mummy's doing this so that we can do these things. But, you know, there is a very big added pressure as a mum
mm.
to not only heal my own trauma of it, but then, like, you know, gift that back to my children so they're not so unworthy growing up, right? I would love my children to, I'd be so excited to see what they could do in 20 years' time with technology as it is.
Do you know that's such a wonderful gift to give your kids, and it's hard. It's so hard because like our parents did the best they could, and
Absolutely.
God, they did the best they could. And sometimes that's not enough. I speak from my experience, sometimes it's just not enough. And when it comes to money, you're so right. It does that stuff that both your dad and your mum, they both have their own money stories. You then take that, develop your own, and then that does move to your children as well, with your husband as well. And it becomes like there's so much complexity to it. And the worthiness piece, like that is one of the biggest money blocks. I'm not worthy of making money. Who am I to triple the amount of money that I make compared to my mum, who worked so hard to put food on the table and make sure that we had a school uniform? Like, there's so many layers to it. And I want to come back to something that you said earlier, because, it's that sense of, well, I don't celebrate my wins. I don't celebrate the wins that I have in financially in my business. I've achieved all of my goals yet in March, and yet I'm still, well, what can I do now? And again, I think this is something that a lot of other women will relate to, because I see this. Women, even me actually, like now that I think about it, I know that I've done things, and it can be hard to pause and to slow down and to reflect and to allow ourselves the opportunity to celebrate our wins, because as women, we've been conditioned throughout our entire fucking lives to be humble, don't brag, don't go and tell people about your achievements, because, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants you to be a bragger. And if you go and tell people about what you've done, they judge you for that.
Yeah.
Which is fucking crazy. It's not expected that a woman will make that much money. That's not the typical expectation. For men, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, how would it look for you if you were to celebrate? Like, what would celebrating mean for you?
Have you ever been I don't know, where you've set yourself a goal where you're like, right, like, okay, every day this week I'm gonna run 5 kilometers, and when I do, I'm gonna spend $200 at Rebel Sports and buy that new pair of shoes, right? There's a mindset there of when you set yourself a goal like that, all right, so once I go tick 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 and hit those boxes, I'm going to do XYZ. The money block, the block for me was very much like, okay, here's the prize. How does that prize look for me when at any given day of the week I'm fortunate enough to be like, I can go and spend that $200 at Rebel and it wouldn't blink an eye? It's working out what for me is my prize. What, for any woman, what does it look like once you've hit that money goal? Or what does it look like once you've bought that new car or photographed that wedding in Vegas? And my husband asked me recently, he goes, what's the end goal? And it's a very good question to ask when you're constantly changing your own goalposts. And I know that I have some mad ADHD, and that does stem from that. But I do have to get so much better at celebrating my wins. And, I've recently started doing it, but celebrating them online. And I've found that majority of people are actually like really grateful to be part of your journey and what you're sharing. And like, what do you mean you're in bloody Vegas doing a wedding? Like, that's so fucking cool. Like, people are just like, people are awesome. And I have a really great following of people who are just so grateful to me. But I've recently, my background at my computer, my background on my phone is just my it's my, what do you call it, like my Pinterest mood board of all the things that I would love to do and have. And every time I open my computer, every time I open my phone, it's there, and I'm reminded of, holy shit, I've done that. And I come back
to the stuff that you've done.
Yeah. And it's just like this thing of being like, holy shit, Mary, like, you did that. You did that. You set yourself a goal and you did it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Another one. I hate that. Can I ask you a question? You already asked me a question. Like, oh, that was a thing in primary school, and I feel like it's a trigger. Anyway, that being said,
Yeah.
so when you think about that, because again, I think this is something that a lot of women will relate to. When you think about the things that you've achieved, you open that Pinterest board, mood board of all of the accomplishments and all of your goals. How do you feel in your body?
Um, I'm I'm really proud of myself. I'm really proud, but there is always an element, always a very quick what now? And what's next? And what else can you do? And yeah, that it's really hard.
And I wonder if that, because I hear you, that moment of proud and then is quickly replaced by, okay, what next? And I'm going to offer something because this is something that I see a lot of. And you might be like, no, Ellie, this doesn't relate to me. And that's totally fine. I almost wonder, though, if that moment of proud gets swallowed up by, okay, but I need to keep going because I can't lose this momentum. Because if I lose this momentum, people are going to see that I'm actually just Mary from the block that
Yeah.
started taking $5, $50 photo shoots for
Yeah.
people. And I don't even have formal qualifications in photography, so I don't really know what I'm doing. So does that make sense? Does that land?
Absolutely. That is absolutely, I mean, you kind of see it all the time, right? Like the people who go on maternity leave or have a baby or do these things. It happened to one of my best friends. They lose that momentum. They lose that presence online. And it's kind of really hard to get back. It's really hard. And I dread that. I'm sort of like, what have I just worked for 9 years doing this all to just stop? And that is a block that I need to be like, Mary, you can go on holiday and not share it and still come back and people will care about you. But it is a huge block for me. Massive, massive. I'm always thinking 3 steps ahead, and I probably should be like, what right now?
It just sounds like it's taking up a lot of kind of like mental energy. Like it sounds really tiring and exhausting. And
Absolutely.
I see that with the women that I work with. I hear it, that constant planning 3 steps ahead. And look, don't get me wrong, planning is a good thing. Absolutely. I'm not saying don't plan and just like live in the moment. Like that's
Yeah.
great, but it's about finding that balance where that anxiety doesn't overwhelm us. Because I see a lot of successful women with a lot of anxiety. And I'm not saying this is you, but just talking more
It
broadly.
totally is.
Well, I didn't want to make an assumption, but like I think we
Yeah.
do have a lot of anxiety, right? And being able to kind of balance that with bringing it back to the present and celebrating those fucking epic wins. Because the thing is, your followers can look at your wins and be like, Mary, you're amazing. I
Yeah.
can look at your photos and direct the listeners to look at your photos and go, they're fucking amazing. Like, honestly, amazing. The end of the day, though, what we say doesn't matter. It's about how you feel in yourself. It's about how our body feels, because often a lot of the time we have our beliefs, like, and I can see it in you where you've got this belief of, I know that I'm doing great stuff. Like, fuck me, I had ticked off all of my goals by March. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Yet the body is
Mm.
saying, oh, but you know what? I'm still scared, because I would argue that little inner child inside of you is kind of like wanting to prove to mum that you can do it, is wanting to prove yourself worthy. And I say this because, and it might not completely all land, but worthiness and money, fuck, is such a big one. And the way that we resolve that is, and heal that money block, is by learning that we are inherently worthy. Money is great as a tool to take your kid to time zone, that
Yeah.
if you're wanting to
Yeah.
go there, or to dream world. And you would be equally as worthy just as that kid who was growing up
Yeah.
with little money. You're the same person. You're still
Yeah.
equally worthy. Money hasn't changed that worth.
Yes. And I think there was a switch recently where I'd been like, for me, money is almost, it's not about the, I mean, it is about the dollar figure, but it's almost like an energy, right?
Mm,
It's ebbs and flows. I could have a really fantastic month, but also I'm giving and I spend, I hire my friends constantly. I give to charities and I do all these things. And it's
mm.
just like this, I know it's going to come back to me tenfold. And it does. It does. It absolutely does. And I can see it. I do have moments of being like, oh, but I've got two kids, a mortgage, I do have those moments, which I'm certain that every single woman would have as well. But, and then also you think, worst case scenario, what if I break both my legs tomorrow and I can't work? I would love to be able to have money in my bank account to save me from that. And I don't know whether that is like a real, ADHD like way of living, where you go, but what about the worst case scenario, when really I should just be living in my moment and being like, I'm going to hire my friend for this, I'm going to hire my friend for that. I built this connection here, and it all just sort of comes to me when I give it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes like with the what ifs, our brain has that tendency to go, what if this really terrible thing happens, break both of my legs? But our brain doesn't do it the opposite way. What if I meet, why has my mind gone blank? Someone exceptional who then invites me to Italy to do their wedding, which will take me
Yes.
close. Like our brain doesn't have those kinds of what ifs. Our brain is always on the lookout for danger and threats and the bad
Yes.
things so that we can plan and prepare. And look, again, planning isn't a bad thing inherently. It's not a bad thing, but I think when we live in that kind of anxiety state of oh, what's going to happen, and we have that constant, like that feeling in our body that's anxious, that's where I feel like it can kind of block us moving forward. And that's why like I'm so passionate about helping women move through the body-based experience, because that's where so many of our money blocks lie, because we get it. We're fucking smart women. We're not
Yeah.
stupid. We know, right? Like
Yeah.
we absolutely can rationalize and think our way through things. But when our body is having a different message, then it can become really difficult to kind of connect the two. Oh my goodness, I could talk about this forever because ugh, but I'm not. I want to thank you though so much, because like I said, I think so many women will be able to relate to this conversation on so many levels. I know that I relate on so many levels, and I really appreciate you and everything that you have shared. What I want to ask though is, because like I said, I think your photos are incredible, and would love for everyone else to check them out and to connect with you if they, even if they're not looking for photographers. Like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
your photos, as soon as they pop up on my feed, just like provide such a spark of energy and joy. I love when they pop up on my feed. Can you tell us where people can find you? And I'm going to pop your info in the show notes as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm in the middle of like kind of pivoting. You've probably seen it online, pivoting what I'm doing. The main goal is to sort of, sorry about it, but sort of just really dwindling down my weddings. I love your weddings and I'll shoot them overseas and I'll do all those things. But my main thing at the moment is content. I love helping women show up online. I love helping women, showing them how to film their own content. Branding and all of that. I may like, please find me on Instagram at Mary Miller Media. That's my main, always, my DMs are always open. But yeah, I'd love
We'll
to bring
definitely
in
link.
my content club.
Ooh, content club. Tell
Ooh.
us a little bit about your content club. What is that?
So that is basically like a monthly sort of subscription to me. I am Brisbane based, but I do have clients in Sydney and Melbourne. And basically, I see you once a month and we shoot high quality content for your brand, for your reels. I show you how to make them yourself, but also I do have a bigger package where I can take over your social media as well and do it for you.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. Like I could
Game
just
changer, man.
I can imagine like just you and content,
Yeah.
like you are seriously the queen
Yeah.
of content. Like it would be amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll pop that info in the show notes. But I want to thank you again for joining us on the Rich Woman Rising podcast. And for all of you wonderful listeners, thank you so much for joining, listening to this conversation. And as always, if you want to share any of your biggest takeaways, thoughts, comments, reflections, my DMs are always open as well on Insta. I would love to hear from you. And if you want to uncover your own subconscious money block and find out which money block might be holding you back from making more money in your business, you might like to take the money blocks quiz. I'm going to pop the link to that in the show notes, and you'll be able to uncover what your primary money block is, how you can overcome it, and start healing it. So I'll pop that in the show notes for you as well. Take care, and I'll see you all next week.